before the break, I mentioned that I wanted to dig into an article before I went back to the phones that I think is incredibly important. Earlier I was having a conversation with Lou and with Sean and Rhonda and Princess and other people about, is this as bad as it gets? And we're all under the reality that this is not as bad as it's going to get. And things are getting worse, not just here in the United States, but around the globe. So here is the article. New York Times, publisher of the New York Times, A.G. Sulzberger, wrote, he actually turned what was a speech at Brown University into an op-ed yesterday, entitled "The Growing Threat to Journalism Around the World." In many countries, journalists are being targeted because of the role they play in ensuring a free and informed society. And I'm just going to read you a couple of snippets, but I urge you, and I will tweet it out. I will tweet out the article as well in just a second. It is critical that everybody read it, because we are in dire states. So this is what AG writes. Every year, we put reporters on the ground in more than 160 countries. We're in Iraq and Afghanistan, covering the violence and instability wrought by decades of war. We're in Venezuela and Yemen, reporting on how corruption and conflict have led to mass starvation. We're in Myanmar and China, eluding government monitors to investigate the systematic prosecution of the Rohingya and Uyghurs. These assignments carry considerable risks. In recent years, my colleagues have suffered injuries from landmines, car bombs, and helicopter crashes. They've been beaten by gangs, kidnapped by terrorists, and jailed by repressive governments. When militants attacked a Nairobi mall, you could spot our journalist in the crowd because he was the only one running toward gunfire. Having covering conflicts since the American Civil War, we've learned from experience how to support and protect our journalists in the field. In any given year, our newsroom budgets include funding for bulletproof vests, hazmat suits, and armored cars. We develop detailed security plans for high-risk assignments, and our journalists themselves prepare obsessively. C.J. Shrivers, a former Marine who spent years reporting on the war for the Times, trained himself to lift the weight of his photographer so he could carry his person to safety if he were shot or hit by shrapnel. He goes on to write, "Over the last few years, however, something has dramatically changed. Around the globe, a relentless campaign is targeting journalists because of the fundamental role they play in ensuring a free and informed society. To stop journalists from exposing uncomfortable truths and holding power to account, a growing number of governments have engaged in overt, sometimes violent, efforts to discredit their work and intimidate them into silence. This is a worldwide assault on journalists and journalism, but even more important, it's an assault on the public's right to know, on core democratic values, on the concept of truth itself. And perhaps most troubling, the seeds of this campaign were planted right here, in a country that has long prided itself on being the fiercest defender of free expression and a free press. Let me start by stating the obvious. The media aren't perfect. We make mistakes. We have blind spots. We sometimes drive people crazy. But the free press is foundational to a healthy democracy and arguably the most important tool we have as citizens. It empowers the public by providing the information we need to elect leaders and continuing oversight to keep them honest. It bears witness to our moments of tragedy and triumph and provides the shared baseline of common facts and information that bind communities together. Around the world, the threat journalists face is far more visceral. Last year was the most dangerous year on record to be a journalist, with dozens killed, hundreds imprisoned, and untold thousands harassed and threatened. Those include Jamal Khashoggi, who was murdered and dismembered by Saudi assassins, and Maxim Borodin, a Russian journalist who fell to his death from the balcony of his apartment after revealing the Kremlin's covert operations in Syria. He goes on in this article to name specific instances with which journalists have been put in harm's way, where journalists have been attacked by governments, where, in fact, most recently, I want to tell you this piece here too. Just to the extent of what Trump and the Trump administration is doing and how we are marching very clearly into authoritarianism. Listen to this part of AG's piece in the New York Times, The Growing Threat to Journalism Around the World. Quote, "To give you a sense of what this retreat looks like on the ground, let me tell you a story I've never shared publicly before. 2 years ago, we got a call from a United States government official warning us of an imminent arrest of a New York Times reporter based in Egypt named Declan Walsh. Though the news was alarming, the call was actually fairly standard. Over the years, we've received countless such warnings from American diplomats, military leaders, and national security officials. But this particular call took a surprising and distressing turn. We learned the official was passing along this warning without the knowledge or permission of the Trump administration. Rather than trying to stop the Egyptian government or assist the reporter, the official believed the Trump administration intended to sit on the information and let the arrest be carried out. The official feared being punished or even alerted us to the danger. Unable to count on our own government to prevent the arrest or help free Declan if he were imprisoned, we turned to his native country, Ireland, for help. Within an hour, Irish diplomats traveled to his house and safely escorted him to the airport before Egyptian forces could detain him. We hate to imagine what would have happened had that brave official not risked their career to alert us to this threat." Y'all, I implore you to read the rest of this piece that I have given you snippets of. Understand that the Trump administration is at the helm of an anti-journalism and anti-truth campaign that other leaders around the globe are taking up, using his language in regard to fake news, and going so far as to murder, maim, kidnap, harm, and harass journalists that are doing their job to bring truth and transparency to the people of the world. They went so far as to deny protection to a New York Times reporter. What if the country of Ireland had not acted on his behest? This is where we are. This is what this government under Donald Trump is doing on an hourly basis. When we lose, okay, the power of the press, the freedom of an independent press, we lose our democracy. Senator John McCain once warned this: when you look at history, the first thing that dictators do is shut down the press. Why? Because then there is no one that will tell you the truth. Then you have no hope but to rely on what the government is telling you that you need to know, as opposed to the truth that you need to know. According to A.G. Stellenberger's op-ed, one recent poll found that 82% of Republicans, 82%, now trust President Trump more than they trust the media. One of the president's supporters, if you all remember, was convicted of sending explosives to CNN, one of the most frequent targets of Trump's fake news claims. I tell you this because it is serious. You know, this is what Thomas Jefferson wrote once. The only security of all is in a free press. John F. Kennedy called the free press, and this is according to the New York Times article, invaluable. Because without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. Ronald Reagan wrote this: "There is no more essential ingredient than a free, strong, and independent press to our continued success in what the Founding Fathers called our noble experiment in self-government." He ends the piece in the New York Times, "The Growing Threat to Journalism Around the World," with this call to action. The true power of a free press, let me say this again. The true power of a free press is in an informed, engaged citizenry. I believe in an independent journalism and want it to thrive. I believe in this country and its values, and I want us to live up to them and offer them as a model for a freer and more just world. The United States has done more than any other country to popularize the idea of free expression and to champion the rights of the free press. The time has come for us to fight for those ideals again. This is A.G. Sulzberger, who's a publisher of the New York Times. And with that, I'm going back to the phone. So give me a call at 866